Do I regret moving from Australia to Canada? Well, you have to watch this video till the end to find out. Hi Magis gang, my name is Majojiba, Magi for short. If you're new here, you are welcome to my channel, and if you're a returning subscriber, welcome back. It's always a pleasure to have you here with me again. Group hug. I hope everyone's having a good week so far and you are not letting anyone or anything dim your light. The 5th of August made it 1 year since I arrived in Canada as a permanent resident, and I feel like it's only right for me to do a recap of how the year went for me and also answer some of the burning questions some of you have asked. So that's what I'm going to be doing in this video. So go ahead, grab a cup of coffee, tea, water, whatever it is that you need to be comfortable. Let's get straight into this video. So I will start from when I first landed in Canada. My first port of entry into Canada was actually at the Montreal Trudeau International Airport in Montreal, Quebec. The weather was nice that day. It was 29 degrees, beautiful sunny day. At the airport, I felt like I was in France, even though I haven't really been to France yet. But the reason why I say that is because at the airport, a lot of the officials, or not even a lot of the officials, all the officials were speaking French. So they would speak French to you initially. So it was like bonjour, 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 bon something. The child a bon something. So bonjour, mademoiselle. And that's like the first go-to means of communication, until I kind of indicated that I am an English speaker and I would prefer to be communicated with in English. Prior to landing, I did have an idea that Quebec was the predominantly French-speaking part of Canada, but I assumed that, okay, because it's an international airport, English would be the go-to means of communication, but I was wrong. I was wrong. Good thing that the officials were bilingual, else I would have regretted not taking my French classes seriously in high school. Anyway, so moving on, at the first port of entry, I had to do what's called a declaration of who is traveling. So it basically involved filling out a form. It was actually a digital form on a computer kind of setup that I had to fill out to fill in some personal information. After I filled out the form, it did bring out a receipt, and I took the receipt along with me. So after printing out the form, I moved to a customs stand. There was a lady there, a customs personnel, and she asked me some basic questions like, what brings you to Canada? Where are you coming from? Where is your final destination? Things along those lines. She also checked the receipt which I got after I filled in my declaration of who is traveling. After which she checked my ArriveCan receipt code. She also checked my COVID test which I did in Australia prior to traveling. And then she also looked at my COVID vaccine certificate. So when she has checked all the documents that she wants to check, she told me that I was free to move around in Canada as I pleased, as I did not need to quarantine, which was quite good for me because that meant that I was able to accomplish a lot more during the first week of my arrival. I will leave a link above this video for the video that I made concerning my first week in Canada, so you can watch that video when you're done watching this one. After all the check-in, she directed me to the Canada Border Services Agency. At the Canada Border Services Agency, I was there for quite a while, to be honest, and I actually had a connecting flight to catch from Montreal to Calgary within 3 hours. This is something that you would also need to take into consideration if you're not yet in Canada and you're considering moving here. If your port of entry is not the province of your final destination, then you need to allow time for the Canada Border Services Agency protocols so that you do not miss your connecting flight. So basically what I'm saying is your connecting flight should not be too close to when you are arriving from the first flight you enter into Canada, if your port of entry is not the province of your final destination. So at the Canada Border Services Agency, I joined the queue to get an alphanumeric code, and after getting this alphanumeric code, I joined another queue to have the alphanumeric code displayed on the screen so that I could proceed to the counter to have my documentations checked for me to be fully cleared to enter Canada. So after I got the code, I waited for over an hour, approximately 1 hour and 20 minutes, for my alphanumeric code to be displayed on the screen and for me to get called to proceed to the counter to finish the checks. Now my connecting flight is in less than 2 hours. One thing I want to say is, in this life, It's good to be good, and I'll explain. In this life, it is good to be good, no matter how anybody treats you. So when I was at the Canada Border Services Agency, an agent was going around checking that people got the right alphanumeric code so that at least they are heading towards the proper counter to be cleared to enter Canada fully. Because apart from permanent residents at the Canada Border Services Agency, there were also people that were there that were international students, and there were people on visiting visas as well. So there were different codes apparently that people needed to get. Anyway, so she was going around checking that everybody had the right code and were heading towards the right counter and on the right queues. When she got to me, she skipped over me and went to the person after me. And I was a bit shocked because I felt like right here, I believe she saw me, but I assumed it was an accident, and I kind of just composed myself because as of this time, I had already been on flight for over 30 hours and I was a bit tired. So I composed myself and I just smiled and said, "Excuse me, but I think you've skipped over me accidentally." So she comes back to me and then she just looks at my queue paper. She doesn't even say, "Oh, I'm sorry," or she doesn't even say any apology whatsoever. Not like I'm saying that I wanted that, but it would have been nice considering the fact that she skipped over me and went to someone else. I was there before that person. So she skipped over me and went to check the person. Anyway, let me not dwell on this too much. So she comes back and then she just looks at my paper and just gives it back to me and says, "You're on the right queue." And she proceeds to move ahead. At that point, I took it to myself that, okay, fine, it wasn't a mistake that she skipped over me. She actually did that intentionally. But this kind of brings me back to what I had said in a video I made while in Australia about the racism thing. So it's something that you guys have to be aware of. Like, if you're coming to a Western culture, it might not be outright, but there might be subtle means that it might occur. That doesn't negate the fact that there are still good people here, and it is still a wonderful place to be regardless. So if you ever, I hope you don't, but if you ever experience something like that, please don't let it give you a skewed image or give you a bad mentality of the Western culture, because it's something that is going to be here for as long as the earth exists. So let's just come to terms with that. What we can pray and hope for is that it does reduce significantly and continues to reduce, but it is there, and don't let it get to you if you ever are in a situation that someone is throwing shade or is doing anything of that sort. Who would have known when it was my turn to go to the counter to be fully cleared to enter Canada? She was the one that attended to me. And one thing I'm happy about till this day is that I handled that situation well. I didn't let the stress of the travel get to me. I didn't let how I felt she behaved get to me and impact how I reacted in that situation. She was the one that finished my clearance. She reviewed my documents and gave me the clearance that I needed to proceed into Canada fully cleared. Just a random statement. I know that one of the requirements when you're coming as a permanent resident is that you need to have proof of funds. I did have my bank statement that showed my proof of funds and all that. And one thing I noticed was at the airport, for me at least, I wasn't asked to present my proof of funds. So I didn't show anybody my bank statement. I don't know if it's cut across the board, but that was what happened in my situation. So at this point, once I was done with my clearance from the Canada Border Services Agency, I was literally left with 50 minutes to catch my connecting flight to Calgary. So I quickly headed towards the carousel to get my luggage and proceeded towards the arrival area. And on arrival, you are meant to do a COVID test. But in my case, because of the short time I had to catch my connecting flight, I was given an at-home test kit to do my arrival COVID test when I get to my final destination, which was quite helpful. After that, I checked in my luggage and then I proceeded to airport security. After that, I went to find my boarding gate. So on a lighter note, when I got to my boarding gate, it was announced that my flight had been delayed a few minutes. This was a bit of a relief because I was a bit scared that due to all the time I had spent with Customs and Canada Border Services Agency, I felt like I was going to miss my flight, but it all worked out in the end. No food was included in my flight bill. However, if you wanted to eat anything on the flight, you could pay for it on the flight and you would be served. I did get free apple juice though. The flight from Montreal to Calgary was only 4 hours long, but I would tell you this, Air Canada, that Air Canada seat was the most uncomfortable flight seat I have ever sat on in my history of flying. I don't know why it felt so hard. On a lighter note though, the cabin crew were very polite and friendly, so that kind of eased the stress of sitting on a seat that felt like I was sitting on a rock. To be honest, I'm not joking. Even my Nigerian folks, Dana Airways, Arik Air, the seats in those aircrafts are more comfortable than the Air Canada aircraft I was in. No shade whatsoever, I'm just saying facts. Okay, so now we are in Calgary. So let's fast forward a bit to my second week in Calgary. I had a couple of job interviews lined up and I actually started my first job in Calgary, Canada in the same month of August that I arrived. All glory be to God. I got a slightly better job offer, so I left my first job to my second job around the ending of September 2021, and to 2022 mid-April I got another job, so I left my second job for my third job in mid-April 2022. All the companies I have had the pleasure to work for so far have wonderful leaders and management teams that want to see you succeed, which is awesome. Still in the month of April 2022, I bought my first car in Canada, all to the glory of God. It's not brand new, but it is several steps up from my first car ever, which I bought in Australia. Upon buying my first car in Canada, I stand by what I said in this video. Owning a car in Canada is more expensive than owning a car in Australia. Or let me be more specific. Owning a car in Calgary is more expensive than owning a car in Melbourne, since those are the two cities I have lived in. Don't worry. I'm coming. I will break it down. So we'll start from car insurance. As a newcomer to Canada, my car insurance cost over 4,000 Canadian dollars for a year. But I did get discount from work, so my car insurance came down to 3,959 Canadian dollars for a year, which is still a lot of money. In Australia, my insurance premium always ranged between about 660 Australian dollars to 1,380 Australian dollars per year, which is a huge difference in my opinion compared to $3,959 for a year. In Canada, as a newcomer or a first-time driver, your insurance premium will be considerably higher than someone that has been in Canada for a while and has been driving in Canada and also has a good driving history. I've been told that if I maintain a good driving history, that is no demerit points, no speeding tickets, no unnecessary fines, and other things that would obviously cause you to not have a good driving history in the country. If I stay away from all of those things, my insurance premium would eventually drop down to about 1,000 and something Canadian dollars, which is more bearable in my opinion, and hopefully that happens pretty soon. As of the time I was in Australia, as a newcomer, there wasn't really any hard rule in place that would make someone that is new to the country have a higher insurance premium than someone that had been there for a longer period of time. If you're in Australia right now and you're watching this video, please leave a comment in the comment section below letting us know if that has changed. So the next is car maintenance. We all know that car maintenance is very important to keep your car running and performing optimally. In my opinion, car maintenance is higher in Canada compared to Australia for several reasons. Number one, rock chips. I keep asking myself this question: why is there so much gravel on the roads in Alberta? I couldn't come up with the answer myself, so I turned to Dr. Google, and boy did I find the answer I was looking for. So picture this. You are driving on a freeway, 100 kilometers per hour. You're driving on a freeway. Have you pictured it? Okay. So you're driving on a freeway, 100 kilometers per hour, and you hear something just fly and hit your windscreen. You're on the freeway, so you obviously cannot stop. But I wanted to stop to check what happened, like what exactly just happened here, because I was confused. So something flies, hits my windscreen, and I can't stop because I'm on a freeway, and if I stop, I'll be causing an accident. Someone will hit me or I'll hit someone, and it will all just blow up in flames.
I could have killed a lot.
So I couldn't stop. I had to keep driving, but now I can see this chip on my windscreen that is distracting me from driving, because I'm like, I'm just on my own. Where did this gravel fly from? And now it has chipped my windscreen. The car I had in Australia was a 2003 car. And I can tell you this with my full chest. My car in Australia had a windscreen that was in a better condition, a way better condition than the windscreen of the car I have here in Canada. And my car in Canada is several years newer than the car I had in Australia. And it hurts. It hurts that rock chips is something that one has to accept in Alberta. You have to accept that it's something that will happen to your car. This was not something I had to think about in Australia. I know in Australia, people like fully wrap their cars with 3M or paint protection film, PPF, like they would call it. But that wasn't something I did for my car in Australia, because my car was a 2003 car. It wasn't in a bad condition, but it was a 2003 car. Come on, why wrap a 2003 car? But something I've had to do here with the car I currently have is paint protection film, PPF 3M, that has been put around certain parts of the car that are more prone to the rock chips, apart from the windscreen, because you can't put 3M on your windscreen. And obviously, the paint protection film comes at a cost. You can do a Google research and see how much that would be roughly, but there's no point boring you with all those details. You have to do what you have to do to keep your car in a pristine condition that makes you happy when you go to drive it. In Melbourne, gravel wasn't a thing on the road, so I never thought about using PPF to wrap my car, and I probably wouldn't have, because the car I had in Australia was a 2003 car, like I've said like 5 times already. The next is winter tires. Winter tires in Canada, in Calgary, in Alberta, I believe all around Canada. Winter tires are essential if you want to feel considerably safe on the road while driving in the winter. In Melbourne, it doesn't snow. Well, it didn't snow all the time I was there, and in the winter time, the temperature rarely gets to -10, rarely. It's usually revolving around like -5 to +5 in the winter, something along those lines. But I know that there's somebody that will comment on this video to argue with me. Basically, in Melbourne, I could get away with not having winter tires on my car. So I had all-season tires that I used on my car all year round. If you want to feel safe on the roads in Canada, you need to have winter tires. It's necessary because the roads get icy, the roads get snowy, and it can be a big disaster if your car does not have the right amount of grip for you to drive. So it's just something you have to keep in mind as well, because obviously if you have all-season tires for the summertime and then you have the winter tires for the winter time, your expense automatically has increased. No two ways about it. You would need to buy those tires. They will not fall out from the sky. So you would buy the tires, and depending on the car you're driving, if you're driving like a bigger car, obviously the tires would be more expensive than if you get a smaller car. And to me, what I would suggest, if you can, if you're coming here, buy a 4-wheel drive or an all-wheel drive at least. Stay away from front-wheel drives. Stay away from rear-wheel drives. The weather condition during the winter, the road condition is not favorable to front-wheel drives or rear-wheel drives. I've literally seen a car and I could tell the car was a front-wheel drive because when the person, I was at a red light, I was in my church member's car. This was prior to me getting my own car. We were at a red light and the cars were coming from the other side. So this car, it was last winter. So this car was coming to turn to go, and as the car turned, I could see the back of the car do like this. I'm like, what's going on here? It was a sedan, a Volkswagen Jetta. So it was a front wheel drive, most likely. So the back of the car just did like this, and I'm like, oh boy. All-wheel drive or four-wheel drive. That is the recommendation if you want to buy a car in Canada. Still on the winter weather situation, let's talk about road salts. The city of Calgary believes in using the right amount of salt or sanding products in the right place and at the right time. When road surface temperatures are between 0 and -10 degrees Celsius and the temperature is not expected to go any lower, salt is used to melt accumulated snow and ice. When road surfaces are below -10 degrees Celsius with colder temperatures forecasted, a sanding chip mixture is used, which is made up of 3% salt and a whopping 97% fine gravel. They call it fine gravel, but it is still this gravel that would chip at your paint and at your windscreen. It is a necessary evil for the winter time, else the road would not be drivable. So basically, all of this translates to a higher cost of maintenance of your car. When you drive your car in the winter time, it is advisable that you wash your car a bit more frequently than you would in the summertime, so that the salt does not start to react with your paint and the metal on the car and rust begins to develop. Rust is another thing that is common on cars in Canada, but if you're someone that does not like to see rust on your vehicle, then you have to do what is necessary to prevent the formation of rust on your vehicle, which includes washing your car frequently in the winter time, obviously through a car wash, because you can't stay outside your house in the winter time with a hose to wash your car. I'm not even sure. The water will freeze. It will freeze. So you have to go to a car wash, obviously. So washing your car in the winter time more frequently, especially if you're driving. So if you're not someone that works from home and you have to drive every day, or if you have to drop your kids at school, whatever takes you out frequently, you need to wash your car more so that the salt doesn't deposit, especially underneath the car. And before you know, some chemical reaction starts and you go for your change of tires in the summertime. When they lift your car up to change the tires and they're doing the inspection, they tell you they can see rust. I mean, that's not the news you want to hear ever, trust me. And if you have deep scratches in your paint that can be felt with your fingernail, it is advisable that you have those things filled out, you have them painted and covered up so that the formation of rust is not encouraged. Because when the salt and the moisture and everything interacts with that exposed metal in your car, it will encourage the formation of rust. Okay, now it's time to answer some of your burning questions. So Laramie Duncan asked, when you mention your moral compass and avoid things that don't feel right, are you talking about morally questionable ways of obtaining permanent residence, for example, lying, marrying, etc.? This is a question that was asked on this video. Well, I am in no position to dictate what would be anyone's moral compass. However, since you have given examples of questionable ways that someone could use to obtain permanent residence, yes, in my opinion, those ways are not ways I was going to consider to obtain a permanent residence status in Australia. I believe that if you don't stand for something, you will fall for anything, and only dead fish go with the flow. So just because some people are doing a certain thing to get permanent residence status in a country, in this case Australia, doesn't mean it's something that I would consider or you should consider either. So I am a Christian, bold and proud, and I am a bit sad that the sacred union of marriage that God created has turned into a lot of things which it shouldn't be. For example, a means to an end and a business strategy. I believe that if you are on a temporary visa in a country, in this case Australia, and you genuinely love someone that has permanent residence or citizenship status in that country, and that person also genuinely loves you, go ahead, get married. But if you are on a temporary visa and you genuinely love someone that has permanent residence or citizenship status in the country, and the other person that has the permanent residence or citizenship status in the country doesn't love you genuinely, or vice versa, maybe you're the one that is playing the tricks in this case, please do not get married. We need to always look at the bigger picture when making a decision on who we want to marry, because the choices we make will be felt by other people as well, apart from ourselves. If you are truly determined to get permanent resident status in Australia or in any country apart from the country you originated from, I believe that you can do it. I believe it's something that is achievable. And even though it might not be Australia, it could be Canada, it could be England, or it could be the US, or any other country for that matter. Take me for example. I was in Australia. I was trying to get my permanent resident status, but it wasn't working out. So I applied, looked elsewhere to Canada, and here I am. A lot of, if not all of the problems we have in the society we live in today started in homes. And that is why I believe that we need to make better choices when it comes to who we want to marry, who we want to spend the rest of our lives with, and also why we want to marry that person. We need to be able to create better environments to bring up children that would be emotionally, financially, physically, mentally, spiritually healthy, like all round healthy. As a Christian, one thing that the season of not knowing my status in Australia taught me was desperate times shouldn't call for desperate measures, but it should call for an increase in my faith in God. And I encourage you to do the same. If I wanted to get my permanent resident status in Australia in a morally questionable way, I could have, to be honest, but I realized that the decisions I take have an impact on others as well, and not just myself. And apart from that, I also want to preserve my integrity. Apart from preserving my integrity, I also wanted God to prove himself strong and mighty in that situation, which he did. Marriage is a very serious thing. It shouldn't be taken lightly, and it shouldn't be entered into for the wrong reasons. There are cases of people that got married for the purpose of the other person getting permanent resident status. So after the person gets permanent resident status, they have achieved the goal of the union. So now they see no point being with this person, and things just start going haywire. One thing leads to the other, and they end up having a divorce. But now a child is in the picture, or children are in the picture, and now these children have to live with the reality that they are from broken homes. These children have to bear the trauma of the environment they grew up in. Even if they might get help from a professional to walk through it all, the trauma is there. The memories will still be there. So we must make better choices as individuals if we ever want to see any positive change in this world we're living in, because it is the individual choices that we make that will make the world a better place eventually. And like they say, charity begins at home. Okay, so Juan, sorry if I'm butchering your name, but Juan Rivera asked, overall, is your life better in Canada than Australia? The short answer is yes. My life is better in Canada than it was in Australia. First, I am not on a temporary visa now, so I do not need to think about what's the next temporary visa I need to get on when my current temporary visa is about to expire. In as much as I love Australia with all my heart, the process of moving from one temporary visa to the other was quite emotionally, financially, and mentally draining, to say the least. Secondly, as a permanent resident of Canada, I can apply to jobs that are strictly available to permanent residents and citizens of Canada, amongst other benefits. So now for the ultimate question, do I regret moving to Canada from Australia?
Okay.
The short answer is no, and I'll explain why. In as much as I would have loved to be an Australian permanent resident, as that would have saved me all the stress associated with moving over 13,000 kilometers across the world, coming to Canada as a permanent resident has afforded me the ability to accomplish so much in a very short frame of time, all of which was not possible on a temporary visa status in Australia. So I'm grateful to God for this privilege. And just a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, nothing I have said in this video has been said with the intent to make you skeptical about moving to Australia or Canada. They are both beautiful countries. Australia is an absolutely gorgeous place to be, and I would definitely like to visit it sometime in the future when I can. This video was strictly to share my experience, and I hope you have enjoyed watching it. Okay fam, that's all for today. I hope you found this video educative, informative. If you did, please remember to give me a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, please remember to subscribe and join Magi's gang. Also guys, when you're subscribing, please also remember to click on the bell notification as well, so that you get notified whenever I post a new video. I will see you all in my next video, but till then, as always, stay blessed and remember God loves you. Bye.